Hello, my name is Tim, and I'm the author of Model Railroad Switch List and Manifest Formatter, or MRSLAMF Formatter for short. And in this video today, I want to cover some of the preference settings, specifically those that display what information is shown for car and locomotive movements on a line, how you choose what information is selected or is chosen to be shown, the width assigned to that information, and the various options around that. So if we come into our preference settings, we see over here that there's a change car and data displayed, and a change loco and data displayed buttons. And these two buttons apply to both manifest and switch lists. So whatever you set up apply to both of these types of documents, unless you employ the secondary preferences, which will be covered in a separate video. But if we look at the change car data displayed menu, we come up with a menu here that shows that for the three types of car movements, which are pickups, setouts, and movements. Movements are pickups and setouts within a single location. So that would normally be done by a local switcher, moving, say, from one industry to another, or a yard track to an industry, all within the same location or town. That would be a movement rather than a pickup and subsequent setout. So for those three types of movements, we have individual setups, although the setups are virtually identical. We have 11 fields that we can display. Now, when we consider this, we have to think that each car line or each car movement is going to be displayed on a single line of a manifest or switch list. Unlike JMRI, which wraps lines so that if your information is too long to fit on a line, it simply wraps it around to the next line below. MRSLAMF Formatter does not do this. It holds you to one line per car movement. Therefore, when you're setting this up, you have to consider how much space is available to you on the line of the page that you're printing on. Now, what affects that, if we go back here to our general preferences, is the font that we choose, because these fonts, they're not constant width fonts. In other words, a capital W takes more space than the number 1 or the letter L. And so you can, while both of those are a single letter, you would think they would occupy one character on the line. They actually take a different amount of space. Also, we can print in different size fonts. And of course, the larger the font, the more space on the line that's going to consume. Also, the page size. In the U.S., letter is the dominant size that's used. Outside the U.S., I understand type A4, which is a little bit narrower and a little bit longer than U.S. letter size. That A4 is the dominant size. But we offer A3 through A6 for those outside the U.S. And in the U.S., letter is going to be used most of the time, but we do offer legal, which is 8.5 by 14 inches, which would give you a little bit more space. Then, of course, you can print in portrait or landscape mode. Obviously, if you print in landscape mode, you're using the long side of the paper as the width, so you get more line length for printing more information. But portrait is what most people tend to use. And then you can have 1 or 2 columns per page. And if you're trying to keep your manifests and switch lists to the minimum number of pages, then going to 2 columns can shorten those documents, but it does basically cut the page width in half, so you can't fit as much information in the on a line in 2-column mode as you can in 1-column mode. So let's leave our settings here with Times font with size 10, use letter, portrait, and 1 column. And if we go back to our car preferences window, we have 11 columns of information that we can display at a maximum. The first one is the pickup message. And so you have an option here to show a pickup message such as this on your manifest, so that this is popular for train crews because they can use this as a checkbox to check off when they pick up or set out a car off the manifest to show that they've completed that task. And you can change this to read anything you want it to. You can, type out pickup or anything else that you want, but the default by the program is this, but you can change it to anything that you want. Or if you don't want that to be displayed, you can click here and turn that off. Now, if you turn that off, what the program will do then is print a header line above the pickups and the setouts, declaring that they are pickups or setouts so that it's clear what's to be done with those cars. So you can choose your pickup message, and then you've got 10 fields here that you can choose basically any of the information that JMRI writes into the CSV files. So we have the road reporting markings, the road number, the type of car, its length, its load, and this could be a custom load name or just the L&E, however you have yours set up. The color of the car's location, the track, the destination and destination track, the owner of the car, if you have that field populated, the ID tag, if you are using RFID tags and you populate that information, you could display it here. Same if you have a return when empty location and track set up, final destination and tracks, and then finally the load type. And the load type is just either load or empty. It describes your load. So you can choose any of these fields to be displayed in any order that you want. They do not have to be consecutive. You can have a blank in the middle. If you decided that you did not want load, you can simply choose the blank option there, and that track or field will be skipped. And then for each of these, you choose the width of the column that you want to be displayed. Now, the program does not restrict you. If you tell it that you want to display the road reporting marks in 6 characters, then it will do its best to do that, but they may also spill over. So some trial and error is required sometimes in these. Again, because the fonts are not monospaced, you may tell it 6 characters, but if you're putting in, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or lowercase letters, then they may fit in this 6 space very easily. However, if you're doing all caps and say with M's and W's and other wide characters like that, they may not quite fit. But as you choose the type of field to display in each column, the program will bring in the default width for that type. So for load, it's 4. If you wanted to change that to 8, you can change it to 8, or anything up to 25. 25 is the maximum number of spaces you can assign to a column. Now, based on your page settings and font size, the program estimates how many characters will fit, and it displays here the remaining available width. So this says that we still have about 22 characters left. Well, we're showing, the road and reporting marks, the number, the type, the color, the load, and the track. That's pretty complete information for being able to find and pick up a car. Now, if we wanted to add the destination and the destination track, we would quickly see that we would run out of room here. And so if we come down and choose destination and destination track, we've only got 15 characters assigned for track and 8 for destination. And notice that it's warning us that our output is probably going to be too long to fit on the line by about 3 characters. Now we could come in here and decrease the width to say 11. That gives us actually 1 character left over. But the key will be is whether the information that's printed in destination track will actually fit within those 11 spaces. But for now, let's leave these 2 blank. And we know we'll have plenty of room. And we also see here that we have a color option. When you're looking at a manifest, if all the lines are written in black, they kind of all blur together sometimes. It can be hard to quickly at a glance differentiate between setouts and pickups. So this allows you to print those rows out in different colors. So you can see here I've got my pickup lines printing out in blue, my setout lines in red, and my movement lines in black. Now down at the bottom we have some other options that we can set. If you use kernels in JMRI to group together a number of cars such that they always move together, you can, and you want to see those kernel names, you can select this here, and it will put the first 3 letters of the kernel name right after the road number on the car. Of course, that adds more information or takes up more space on the line width. So unless you're going to use that, I would leave it off. Similarly, car tags such as the hazardous or caboose or Fred car tags can be displayed after the car type field. But again, they take up space, so if you're not going to use those, you can leave that turned off, and that'll give you a little more room for information. The other thing to show is, while we've got here, well, let's hit save to save what we had, and then we'll go right back to it. Now notice that color and type and number, these field names, they can all be customized. So right here, the road number or number, the type, the length. If you wanted to change any of these, you can. If you wanted to change destination to be the forward destination, you can do that. And when you go back into your preferences, it will show that destination is now available to be displayed as opposed to DEST with a period. So you can change any of those that you want. Again, destination is kind of a long word. So if you had only say 4 or 5 characters assigned to the column to be displayed for that information. That word for the heading wouldn't even all fit. But, it's another way that you can customize the look of the information. And if we decide we want to go back to the default, these are the default values, we can go back to those and we'll see that it's back to its original value. So I know some people for locomotives may use the ID tag field as a DCC address field or things like that. You could change the name of it to be DCC if that's what you wanted to do. So now that we've set our preferences, we can go in and generate a train. Now I've got the program set up in the automation mode. And if you're not sure how this works, there is a video on the YouTube channel that describes how this works. So I'm not going to go into it again here, but let's pull up our JMRI trains and we're going to build this train. Now, when we build it, you'll notice that MRSLAMF formatter will automatically sense the new CSV file that JMRI writes and write out a manifest displaying that information formatted according to all the preference settings that we set up. So here's the manifest. You can see the railroad name, the logo that we've put in, the train name is 101, when it was created or validated. This is the train manifest description. We don't have any train comments set up in this one. If we did, they would appear on right above the route comments. Then we have route comments. Then we have our first location. This train originates at the Corbin Yard. This is a route location comment, and JMRI offers a wide variety of different types of comments that can be shown on your paperwork. This one just happens to be a route location comment. But notice here for locomotives and cars, it gives us our pickup message, our road name, number, code, the type of car, the color, the load, and the track, just as we asked it to do. Train goes through a couple of locations with no work. Then at the location named Varilla, it picks up a fully loaded coal car, goes on to Wallens and picks up yet another coal car at the mine. And then when it gets to Loyal, it has a location comment. This comment here is a location comment for Loyal that always shows up. And then we got our set out. So we got our set out message and all of our information for our cars to be set out in the yard, and then the locomotive to be set out back at the in the loco track here at Loyal. Now, if we were to go and change some of our preference settings, for instance, if we were to turn off the pickup message and the set out messages, and then we go back to JMRI, we'll reset that train and then rebuild it. We'll see the program picks it back up or prints it back out. Notice that for cars, it has eliminated the first field, which was the pickup message, but it's replaced it with a header line saying, okay, but these are cars to be picked up, and then these are cars to be set out. So the car pickup message goes on the same line as the car, so you save one line in your page, but it does take up more horizontal space on the line. Similarly, if we go back to our preferences and instead of changing any of the car data, if say we change the font to a Helvetica font, leave it at size 10, and we go back to reset our train and then rebuild it, we'll see now that the manifest looks a bit different with the different font type, and it takes a little more space. You can see here that the track name is covering pretty much half of the page, where with the Times font, it was a little bit less than that. So again, depending on the different settings, the information can take more information to display. Obviously, if we were to go to a bigger or smaller print size, it would squeeze in or expand the information on the line. But font size also affects the vertical size of the information, and so it could also take more pages to display the information. And so we can come in here, save any of this information. We can change the colors. We can change the information to be displayed, the number of columns or spaces to be defined or set aside for each column. Personally, I like to have the pickup messages, and with my preference personally is a Times size font with a font size of 8. And if we go back and recreate that, reset our train and then rebuild it, you'll see now that the information fits well within half a page on here, other than maybe some of these departure lines. But now, and it fit on one page. But let's try if we were to go to preferences and change to a 2-column per page layout, and we go in and reset our train and reprint it. Now we see that the information won't quite fit on a half a page. We would have to do some tweaking of our document to maybe eliminate load as a column in order to get the track information to fit within the 2 columns per line. But we see that it fits well within one page, and for longer manifests that may be 3, 4, or 5 pages long, using 2 columns can save you some paper, but again, at the expense of not being able to fit quite as much information on a given line. Now, if we go back into MRSLAMF Formatter's preferences for the car data, we'll see that because we changed from 1 column to 2 columns per page, effectively cutting the page in half, that our desired output length is now about 15 characters longer than the available space. We see that in the manifest displayed by the presence of these 2 red plus symbols. What that means is, and notice that's in the header line, so what it means is that you have allocated space, more space to print your information than is available on the line. And so there could be information that's missing. Now, in the case of a 2-column setup, if in fact your information spilled over, it would simply print over as it does here, and it would, interfere with anything that was printed in column 2 over here. But if this was over in the second column, it might actually run off the page and you just wouldn't even see it. So you might not even realize that you had information missing, and that's the reason for the double red plus signs here. It's a warning. Your information may be fine, just like here. Even though these go too far, actually that's all the information there is, so that's adequate. The same way here, these are all fine. These are the only ones that run a bit long because I got a little wordy in these descriptions. When you're setting up your descriptions in JMRI for your tracks, you need to consider that this information has to be printed out. Here, Norton class track 1, is Norton really necessary there? Do we need the full word track, or can we go to TK like I have in other locations? So things like that can help you with your documents if you're judicious in your selection of your wordings, just like color, spelling out red, brown, you may be able to abbreviate those, get that down to 3 or 4 letters instead of 7 or 8, and save a little space that way. Now, back in the preferences, if we want to shorten the available space so that we can fit that information into the line, we can come in here and, as we had suggested, maybe reduce or eliminate load. And we see we still have 6 characters left, so if we cut the destination track down to about 19, then that should have us to where we fit within the 2 columns per page. So now if we go into JMRI, reset our train and rebuild it, now we see that the information fits largely within the it fits within the allocated space for the cars. We didn't change locomotives. Locomotives are still showing the double plus sign indicating we're requesting more space than what's available for them. But in the header line for the car pickups, and again for the setouts, there is no double plus, indicating that we have requested space that is available in the page size. So that says we've done a good job of allocating space as guided by the available space or characters that were shown in the car preference window. Now, one thing that did happen, though, is we notice here that for these destinations, that before this said, let's scroll back down to it, Norton class track number 1 and number 2. However, now because I have reduced the amount of width available for this column, the program has truncated the contents of the field. So it has put a plus sign, a red plus sign at the end of the word indicating, hey, there's information here that's missing. You've got content to be printed that's wider than the designated space for this column. So if you see this in your documents, you know your train crews are going to have trouble with this because this doesn't tell them what track number to set those cars out on. So you'd need to go in probably as a, in this case, I would want to come in and maybe rename these tracks to shorten the name in order to make it fit easily in this 2-column mode, or else I would have to go back and change to the 1-column per page mode and print it out that way as to get the full information available. And so just like with car data to be displayed, the change loco data to be displayed, the setup is exactly the same. We've got a pickup message column, which you can either turn off or on, or you can change it to be whatever you want. You've got your 10 columns that you can choose between the available information. And for locomotives, we've got the road reporting marks, the number, the locomotive model, its length, its type, the horsepower, the location and location track that it's on, its destination and destination track where it's going, the owner if you've got that populated, the consist if you're running diesels and have multiple unit lash ups under a consist. You could put the consist ID here for that. And then also the ID tag. If you don't use RFIDs, some people, I understand, use this field to document their DCC address for the locomotive. And so you could actually change that ID tag to be DCC address and then display that information for your operators. Notice that we've got, the same widths could be defined. Notice here we got a blank column in between. The program will just overlook this and it will not waste space with that blank field. So you don't have to, if you decide to take something out, you don't have to try and move all this information left to collapse it. The program will do that for you. We got the warning sign here that we're taking a little bit too much space with our information. So we'll look at the document and see that. And then we got colors, again, that we can choose for our locomotive pickups and setouts, just like we have for the cars. And we have loco headers and loco comments that can be turned off or on here. So that's how these preference settings work for cars and locomotives. And we've looked at a couple of examples of where the information may be too wide to fit on the page or within the available space, and how the program warns you about that. Get your documents set up the way that you want them. And then, of course, once you go through all these iterations and get your documents looking the way that you want them to look, the program saves them, and so they're then set up next time and they'll be applied automatically. And all you have to do is come in here and build trains, and your documents will spit out the way that you want them. So that's the last thing I'd wanted to cover in this particular video on preferences and car and loco data displayed. Watch for other videos that'll cover other aspects of the program. And if you have any questions, be sure to visit the web page, and you can find the email address there, and email me your questions, and we'll do our best to answer you as promptly as we can. So until next time, happy railroading.